Well, hello everyone. I think perhaps John is having some problems with his computer. So I am your host, Arlene Maxim. I am have a special guest today here on Off the Cuff, Kevin Courville, Dr. Kevin Courville. And we wanted to have something that was heart related on this episode on Valentine's Day. And I couldn't think of anybody any better than Dr. Courville. Dr. Courville has been a practicing physician, cardiologist, and heart surgeon for a number of years. I'm going to go ahead and let him talk about his background a little bit. And then we're going to talk about some special projects he has going on internationally. And then talk about a special tool that he has that's been designed to keep your patients out of the hospital in post-acute care settings. Dealing with CHF, we all know that CHF is the number one driver back to the hospital in the emergency room, and is one of the most costly diseases with the Medicare program, and is costing us all as taxpayers an awful lot of money. So, Dr. Courville, thank you so much for coming on Off the Cuff. And here's John. Happy Valentine's Day, John.
Sorry about that. Computer difficulties.
Okay. So
can you hear me?
We can. And
Dr. just fine, John.
Yeah, Dr. Courville is going to introduce himself and talk a little bit about his background, and we're going to talk about Pulsario and what the advantage home care companies have with using a tool such as Pulsario and keeping those patients out of the hospital and gaining what they need in value-based purchasing with those reduced rehospitalizations and emergency room visits. So again, Dr. Courville, thank you so much for coming on, and I will take a listen to you and your background, and then talk to us about your working with international companies and with Pulsario.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. And I appreciate the time. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone as well. So I am a cardiologist. I'm board certified in interventional cardiology as well as advanced heart failure and transplantation, which is sort of my two subspecialties there under cardiology. Obviously, I favor the heart failure world quite a bit because I believe this is where we make our biggest impact. We've dedicated our career at doing so. And over the past, I would say, decade, we've been working diligently at new technology to try to bring on board various ways that, given the paucity of cardiologists in many of the areas of medicine, such as home health agencies and hospice agencies and nursing homes, assisted living facilities, you just don't see cardiologists around in at a nursing home, which is unfortunate because, pretty much everybody there is going to have heart failure, either systolic or diastolic heart failure, or maybe it's just diastolic dysfunction. But it's such an easy thing to fix that heart failure physicians like myself scratch our head, just don't understand why we can't fix this in the world, because quite frankly, with the medication we have this day, the technology that we have on this day, there should be, in fact, very few readmissions. There should be very few admissions, except for new onset failure, of course. So it's just not that difficult to take care of someone the right way with the right technology in place, and the ability to communicate and get medications on board those individuals. So once again, we just got to set out as ways that we can do that. So if a heart failure doctor can do that across the United States, across the world, we should be able to model what heart failure doctors do and be able to put that in place to basically any level of provider, because we're all human beings. We all have the same ability when it comes to doing things for people, and those with the desire to do good things for people for the right reason, we can certainly set out to help each other and do so. So one of the things we've done in our career is build technology to aid in the aspects of managing heart failure patients, to be managed by multiple levels of providers that can perform to the top of their license, so that they're working just as hard or as efficient as a heart failure specialist or cardiologist or whatnot, or for those individuals who specialize in heart failure and cardiovascular disease, such as nurse practitioners, physician assistant, clinical nurse specialists, who really can top out their license by using technology to be able to manage the volume of heart failure patients that we have coming into the world.
I'm a new technology enthusiast. Me and Arlene are always sharing stuff that we're finding back and forth. However, also I've worked in healthcare and administration, particularly with cardiologists and in home care. I find that most of my peers and most of the people in these high level positions are already over inundated, I feel like, with data, or there's always something new coming out. How do you try to set yourself apart in that regard?
That is the question, John, and that is the problem with technology in the heart space. As an example, Apple Watch, right? How many times have you heard the Apple Watch is FDA approved? Yes, for fitness, not medicine. So, but you don't hear that, right? You just
Right.
hear, oh, it's approved. Yeah, fine. It's a bunch of vanity metrics. So you hear things like the Apple Watch at 128 megahertz power, very inefficient power to do what we need from the cardiology world. Um, you also see things like commercials on TV is the best example I have for you, where you can put your fingers on a piece of material and
Right.
get an EKG. Sure, you can if it works. Again, a low powered system where the vast majority of what I'm brought, and this is just me talking here, but when patients bring in all of these things to my office, most of it is artifact, and those are the ones they want you to look at. If it looks like an EKG, nobody cares. Then they bring in 20 things that don't look like an EKG because they're not an EKG. It's all artifact. Well, I have a lot of patients to deal with, and I love them all. But what I don't want is for 20 of them to bring me 20 pieces of artifact that takes me 20 minutes a piece to look at every single day to tell them they're fine. So how do we manage that? A couple of ways we do that in Pulsario. One of which is that the power of our system is 5 times greater than anything else on the market. So when you see things like an Apple Watch, and I'm just going to use examples, but if you say an Apple Watch is doing its single lead ECG at 128 megahertz, and we're going to come in at 512, we're 5 times more powerful. What does that mean from an EKG standpoint? They would be like looking at an old time UHF TV where it's kind of blinking in black and white versus 4K. It's all due to the power. And so when you have a system that is very powerful and is a medical grade device, you're going to see clear systems. You're going to see clear ECGs. You're not going to see much artifact. We have patented technology that rules out that. And the way we do that, John, is we do that via this little device right here, which is the brain of the entire outfit. This is a digital stethoscope on the back, so it has acoustic. And then in here, we have basically the ability to do about 13 different biosensors that connect to you via a patch on your chest, so very much like the Iron Man. You just take it off and on. And so what the system then does is it uses both acoustics and electricity. So here's my example. If you're sitting in your home at night and you hear something stir in the trash can, you hear it. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to go look over there and see what is there. So you're going to verify what you heard. So what we do in our pattern is if we see an electrical beat, the device is going to ask the system, do I also hear that beat? Because I see one, do I hear it? And if there's no, I don't hear it, then it's not a beat, it's artifact. So it's going to eliminate that from the problems, from the strip. So you get a very pure ECG signal every time. So every time one of our patients' heart beat, we say, do we see it electrically? And if the answer is yes, then do we hear it? Yes. Then we magnify those signals as a pure signal. And every beat after that is a cross back and forth. Do we hear it? Do we see it? Do we see it? Do we hear it? The answer is yes. Then it's going to put that beat on the screen. And of course, you can string them out to make, a strip. So that's one of the things that we do, is to eliminate the gross artifact that occurs in the world. I mean, look at a Holter monitor. What best Holter monitor in the world with a 25% accuracy. I mean, but
Yeah,
delivering a
don't even get
signal.
me started about Holter monitors. When I was the administrator, it was that Holter monitors, event monitors, 3-day, 7 days. It's a process. It's a
It is
process, and user error is
beyond belief. Agreed. So that's one of the things that we just completely eliminate by the use of this little bitty system in our patch or our bioband, um, our bio chest patch. So we have a band that can wear around the patient, or we have sort of a sticky patch that sticks right onto a patient's chest. Very comfortable. It's like wearing a Band-Aid. Uh, like I said, I've worn them for a week at a time, throwing batting practice to kids and playing golf and going to the gym, working out, running, taking a shower. It's all waterproof. You can actually swim with the device. So anyway, one of the things we do is digital and electrical with acoustics. The second thing we do is something that you alluded to earlier. When vital statistics and biosensors come into our system, we verify that those biostatistics are actually going to be a problem for a patient or something that can be utilized by the provider to help that patient advance their care. It doesn't always in our system have to do with, avoiding bad events. We can also improve one's quality of life and quality of health by accurate monitoring. So here's an example. Let's say that your blood pressure, if you're a hypertensive patient, standard of care is going to be 140/90 is considered to be hypertension. Okay. Let's say you're on your blood pressure pill and you've been on it for 3 days, and all of a sudden your blood pressure goes to 141/91. Okay. Most systems in the world are going to generate an alert to you as a provider. And what are you going to do with that information as a provider? Nothing. You're not going to change your pill
Right.
for 1 millimeter of mercury over some alert generated for some technology. So what we've done in our system is basically there is a window that you can float in where you're perfectly fine. Okay. This is proprietary technology, but let's just say I know that you're fine if you float in that window. Okay. This is billions of data points that prove this. Okay. Then when you get outside of a window, you still may be just fine, but we want the system to advance its level of monitoring. We call it a Cobra effect. So if the Cobra is laying dormant and every day you're putting in your vital statistics and you're not alerting the Cobra, then we know that you're just fine. I don't need to tell any provider that you're fine. They know that you're fine. So you're not going to get unnecessary alerting. The second thing is if you do wake the Cobra on the first day, it may be that your blood pressure went to 141/91. So the Cobra needs to know about it, but he's not telling anybody yet. He's not striking yet. So on day 2, as an example, you might go down to 138 again, and the Cobra is going to go back to sleep. So that day would have eliminated an unnecessary alert. In our system, then, the second day, if it's the same or a little bit higher, but not yet leveled at a level to trigger a formal alert to that provider, then the Cobra gets even higher and is ready to strike. On day 3, if there's a persistent trend in that particular vital statistic and it goes out again so that a trend is identified, then the Cobra will strike and send an alert that can be utilized by providers, what we call an actionable alert, not just some vanity alert. We're going to show you that there is a trend in this system. Now, I use that for a specific vital statistic like we use blood pressure. Now, when we're pulling in from our BioChest sensor, we're pulling in multiple biosensors. So the fact that your blood pressure may be trending up a little bit may be important to understand, that your blood pressure is trending up, but perhaps there's an adjustment that has been made. So we're going to monitor more than just a blood pressure trend. We're going to monitor pulse trends and thoracic impedance and activity levels and body temperature and HRV and spectral analysis through your HRV. We're going to monitor your skin potential response so that we know if you're under stress or not, emotional or physical stress. When you start putting all of these biostatistics together, then you have a much more actionable alert so that I can tell Arlene, hey, Arlene, this guy's blood pressure up, but so is their, their HRV is flattened, and some of our other proprietary mathematics will show her, oh, you know what? There is a trend here, and this trend is actually a problem, and we need to address it, versus maybe a heart rate trend that's going up, and that may be a good thing. Maybe there was a medication adjustment, and that can be a good thing. So not only are we going to show you the biostatistics, not only are we going to show you your blood pressure and your pulse and your thoracic impedance and all of these different things, but on the dashboard of our system, we're going to show you what your current medications are. And based upon our proprietary information, we're going to tell you whether or not you're at the appropriate level or not, or if they're contraindicated, or that they're just not ready to be used yet. And so in 10 seconds or less, with the system in place, the alert comes to a provider that's actionable. They'll open up a dashboard for the patient on their phone, and within 10 seconds, they'll see what the problem is, what medication they're on, what needs to be adjusted. This is a computer-assisted therapeutic portion of our system, and it'll basically lead you on the next step. And if you take the next step, it'll take you to the next step. So the AI of the system is going to kind of bring you down that road as a provider would. If your vital statistics are out, I get an actionable metric. I'm going to look at your dashboard, and maybe I see that I want to add an ACE inhibitor to you because your EF is low or whatever. And when I try to do that, it lets me know, wait a minute, your GFR is too low, or you need an adjustment to meds, or you can't use that, you're already on Entresto or something like that. So the system is going to take all of those steps that providers already take and know to take, but it puts it in front of you in a 10-second actionable metric. And that's the key to all of this unnecessary business with what you're seeing in the market and what you've seen in the past, John. It's not just, we don't want to flood tons of alerts at a provider. We want to give that provider only actionable alerts and offer them the next step as assisted by artificial intelligence.
And how do you work with the primary physician, or perhaps they have a cardiologist that they've been working with for years, but they don't know anything about Pulsario? And
that's a good question. That's a great question, because I would tell you this: you're spot on. Like the vast majority of patients treated for congestive heart failure are actually treated by primary care physicians, nurse practitioners, and PAs, or clinical nurse specialists. The vast majority of patients with heart failure are going to be treated by primary care and extensions of their offices. So how do we deal with that? Well, by having a system like Pulsario with the intelligence behind it, the artificial intelligence behind it, it's as if you're walking hand in hand with a cardiologist. So the same moves that a cardiologist is going to make, it's going to deliver that to a primary care physician straight away. Primary care physicians know the data. A nurse practitioner knows the data when it comes to heart failure. They know what medications are supposed to be, offered to a patient, but they need to be more specific than that. It's not just that you're on an ACE or an ARB or an Entresto or a beta blocker, but what dose are they on? Is it the appropriate dose?
Right.
So when it comes to a clinical trial, we have all of these clinical trials in our database. We have the clinical guidelines in our database. So when you see a computer-assisted therapeutic maneuver by the system that's offered up to a provider, then they can rest assured that the data they already know is just being presented to them, so that then they can make the right move there, again, to the top of their license, just as if they were a cardiologist. The only difference between myself and many of our primary care physicians or nurse practitioners, PAs, is just the fact that I can go in and put a stent in someone's heart or a defibrillator in their chest. Medication-wise, we all can do the same thing, and we all can be just as effective at doing so. What we need is the time that John alluded to. We need the time back as providers to be able to focus on that one individual. We can't take back yesterday, and we can't give a patient tomorrow, but we can give them is today. And so if I can give a provider, or if the system can give that provider 10 seconds to be at the top of their game and they're making those decisions at the top of their game, then we're going to win as a society. We're going to win as a medical body,
So does,
because
yeah, does
those
someone
primary care can be that level.
so does someone from your office work with other physicians when they're using this device?
Yeah. So anybody, as an example, anybody that's associated to the care of that individual can get on the system and be able to utilize the system. So if John's a primary care doctor and he has the Pulsario system in his office, he can, take care of, say, 400 heart failure patients with ease with one staff, one medical assistant. He can handle 400 Medicare patients easily within the course of a month. And so what happens then is that if he's managing someone and all of a sudden he's maxed out, all of the uh, medications, and the patient is still having difficulties, and he might need to go ahead and escalate to that heart failure specialist, then he can connect via Pulsario to that local heart failure specialist and share that patient up to them. And so they can maybe assist John and say, oh, you know what? You're absolutely right. You've got this guy maxed out and he continues to gain weight. Well, I can tell you as a heart failure specialist, that doesn't happen. This is a non-heart problem. You're dealing with urinary obstructive problem. You're dealing with something else. You're not dealing with a heart problem here. And that's where you can really get a heart failure or a cardiologist associated to the primary care. And everyone that touches that patient on the system can see all of the information that's happening. So if John's changing meds, they're updated in the system. Everybody understands what's going on. If he wants to copy the cardiologist or the nephrologist or the neurologist, that patient's a stroke patient, he can just simply copy. It's as simple as an email. You think about yourself as you're going to send, John will send Arlene and me an email, and it's going to be send Arlene, copy me. Well, it's that simple in the system. You can copy the cardiologist, nephrologist, and then he's going to get an alert or an email, the preference of that provider. They'll get that email to understand, oh, John just changed, the patient's Entresto to max dose now. That's great. I'm glad, he's taking care of our patient appropriately. So that's how we work within that. And then we have an associated company that can manage these alerts and these calls for patients, educational calls or alerts, based upon that. So we have a sister company that can manage these alerts for doctors who don't want to do it in their office, or we can just assist the provider via both clinical and technical support in their offices once they're on the system. So yeah.
Is this, and I want to make sure that I'm clear, and I may it may be too advanced for this conversation, but I just out of curiosity, is this the same thing as replacing that 3-day, 7-day monitor in the physician's office? Would they be able to replace what they're doing for event monitoring with Pulsario? Does it meet the same reimbursement guidelines as well? And is it cost effective for the group?
Absolutely. So yeah, great question. So we are currently working with FDA to finalize our approval for the actual BioChest. The rest of the system can be utilized in the United States, but we're about 90 days out from this being approved in the United States. And then, yes, it will eliminate the need for other systems for any of those 24, 48, 7-day, 30-day event monitors, potentially even the implantable loops. Because most of the information you're going to be able to get from our system, because it's wearable, it's rechargeable. It has a 7-day battery life. You plug it back in on a USB-C and it charges in 2 hours, gives you an additional 7 days. So if you want to monitor somebody for months, you can do so without the need for an implantable, with the technology being so powerful and the patented technology with using both acoustics and electricity. You're going to get a very clear signal that we're certain will rival that of an implantable loop recorder.
We had many issues with the data being transposed back to our office. The number of alerts, yes, that was an issue, and I think you've already discussed that. but we've had a lot of issues with the setting up of the device and transmitting on cellular Wi-Fi, this or that. I had a patient come in one time that was like, look, I've never worn this device because I can't get it to work, but y'all have got 7 days of readings from me. I promise you I didn't wear it. And so we had to talk to the doctor, but I mean, if she had not said anything, I mean, you could potentially gather that was true data. So I believe the space is very disorganized.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and then when you get data, the data tends to be very artifactual, And so again, I go back to the technology. If you're wearing it and you're getting a bunch of electricity but no sound, you're not going to get an EKG. Like if it's sitting on top of a speaker and you're getting a bunch of bouncing around or whatever, and it's not hearing the heartbeat as it should or where it should be within that ECG cycle, you're going to get nothing. You're not going to get that. So yeah, that's problem with that. But with regard to the transmission and whatnot, and people utilization of the device, this is where you're going to get so much problem. I mean, how many times you saw that as an administrator? The phone calls that come into the nurse, the patients having to come back to the office because this didn't work or that didn't work or whatnot. That's a very problem area for any type of monitoring system. What we did to overcome that is something very interesting. We believe it to probably be one of the first companies in medicine to do so, but we have our own artificial intelligence bot. It's called Pulsario, and Pulsario is AI that will answer all of your questions on the fly, just like Siri would or anybody else, but it doesn't go out to the internet and grab information. It's only trained, our Pulsario is only trained with evidence-based factual information or information that we have taught our AI about how the system works. So if you don't know what the blue color means on the dashboard, you just, hey, Pulsario, what's the blue color for? And it'll say, well, because of you are a heart failure patient with an ejection fraction less than 40, that tells you that medication is indicated for you and that your provider will likely be putting you on that medication. Would you like to know more about the medicine? Sure.
Wow.
And it'll keep on trucking. So you can have that conversation with Pulsario. You can do it as a clinician. You can do it as a patient. You can do it as a salesperson. You can do it as an administrator from a hospital. And then what we try to do is close some of those loops for administration as well with our back end, so that if you had a cardiologist or a primary care doctor utilizing the system and they've got nurses and under that provider, and you've got 200 or 300 patients on the system, and you want to know how that system's working that day, well, we're going to let you know. Hey, John, there were 8 alerts that were sent today, and here's what happened with the action of both those alerts, and those alerts were all closed out by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and here's your 4 o'clock report to let you know that everybody's put to bed with the appropriate medical therapy, and there's no open, alert that somebody's just sitting out there waiting on a doctor to call them back. So we've tried to eliminate as much we can with intelligent systems so that we eliminate all of these unnecessary phone calls. Why is that important? Because that nurse can then spend the time talking to the patient about how to get them better, and answering questions that matter.
Yeah.
Well, and I think anecdotally, but I think you might agree. I think you especially agree, the physician's office is not the physician, just like the church isn't the pastor. Very important, the doctor, you're not billing. But man, the working mechanism is that MA, is that nurse, is that front office person. And I can tell you again from just my experience that you should see the look on their face when John Kublank, young administrator, ready for new technology, like, I want to bring in all these new systems, because they're thinking, oh my goodness, the influx of phone calls we're going to get, I'm going to quit. And I'm not even joking with you. I had a whole department of staff walk out on me one day because I was trying to introduce new technology. So I've seen it. It can be extremely difficult with change. And so how do y'all address those crucial individuals, the MAs, the nurses, to make sure that they're orientated to the device and up to speed and ready to go?
Yeah. Well, that's, as any new product is going to have that opportunity to disrupt. And so what we want to do is completely not disrupt. And so what we go in and say to the nursing staff, listen, we've been through the headache. I think I'm on my 8th EHR, in my own office. It's not fun to go from one system to the next. But here's what the system is going to do. If we start using the system today on Monday, you're going to get about 5 hours back this week of your time that you would have spent unnecessarily by using the system that you're going to use. You need about 30 minutes of time and an iPad or a telephone or a computer to understand the system, how it works, and to be able to utilize it in totality. Everything else is going to be there day in, day out, supporting you through the artificial intelligence and the robot. If you don't know what it is, just ask a robot. She'll tell you in 2 seconds. Hey, sorry, why is this? Oh, yeah, it's that because of that. Oh, great, I got it. You don't have to start digging through manuals or calling some support person or whatever. It's all in there. So what we do is try to go in there day one and say, listen, we built the system as clinicians in an office just like yours because we were getting overwhelmed. And the system is built for you by somebody just like you to go in there and do that. So you're going to get five hours of time back every week by utilizing the system. And those other systems that you're on, you're going to eliminate all of those and be able to get on one simple system to do all of the things that you need to do.
Interesting. I remember a while back when I was talking to you that you have predictive analytics available as well, and that you can actually predict CHF prior to an event occurring.
Yes. So, So you know this very well, Arlene. What you can have is, you have a ton of scales out there. You have guideline directed medical therapy, and everybody knows that if you go up by 3 pounds on any given day, you double your diuretics and then yada, yada, yada. Yes. And that works very few times. If you're doing it appropriate, you can keep a few people out of the hospital. But we understand that there's 14 different clinical trials that actually looked at weight-based therapy and phone calls from home health agencies to keep people out of the hospital, and all 14 of them were negative clinical trials. That system does not work. The system is utilized because we have a payer code for it.
Mm-hmm.
Reality. So what we've got to do is take the system that exists and make it better so that we can give those home health agencies, the nurses and the providers and administrators of home health agencies that have put forth the funds to keep someone on staff to do that. We've just got to get them a better tool to say this actually keeps people out of the hospital. So what we do is look more, if you will, at the autonomic nervous system. One of the last frontiers in medicine. We know, as an example, you as a human being, when you start to feel bad, the first thing you start doing the next day is to query yourself. Did I just sleep bad last night? How did I feel yesterday? I'm kind of a little off, but I don't feel like calling a doctor today. I certainly don't have time to take off of work and go in and sit in a doctor's office for an hour and then get a 10-minute appointment. So I'm going to wait another day. And then if tomorrow I am feeling worse, then maybe I'll consider it. And the next day happens and yeah, I'm probably getting sick. Maybe I'm going to get better because I don't feel that bad just yet. And then the third day comes around and you're like, nah, cat's out the bag. My throat, I can barely swallow. My temperature's up. It's time to go. And then you call and make an appointment and yada, yada, yada. Well, if you do that in heart failure, and everybody does in heart failure, it's too late. The cat's out of the bag. You're going to the hospital. We have a beautiful graph in some of our slide presentations where you can detect a weight gain within 4 days of a hospitalization, a rehospitalization in a heart failure patient. Again, go through that scenario again I just gave you. We're on day 3 and they figured out, nope, they're in trouble. I don't care how good you are. There's nothing out there in the world by mouth that you're going to be able to do to turn that patient around in 24 hours and keep them out of the hospital. It will not work. Yeah. So yes, what we do is we look further in. So even before you had that first morning of feeling bad, even before you had that second day of a sore throat, 7 days before that, your body was fighting the virus. And you could have seen different changes in your body, like changes in heart rate variability, potentially thoracic impedance changes, certainly your sleep wake cycle, your changes between your cyclic day, your cyclic night, your emotional and physical stress that became picked up within our system by these skin potential response measurements. When you put all of that in context, now you can back up 10 to 12 days before that hospitalization and say, okay, something is definitely going on here. There are clear trends that are defined, and we know based upon our proprietary information that if those trends are allowed or enabled for the next 7 to 10 days, that patient is going to be hospitalized or in an emergency room or worse. They're going to have a bad outcome. So how do we do that? We look into the autonomic nervous system um, and utilize those trends in the ANS to be able to evaluate the biosensors and the biostatistics well before you get that clinical indication that there's going to be a problem. You know, take a diastolic heart failure patient with wide open MR. It's not going to take 4 days. You mentioned it earlier. It might only take 24 hours, 36 hours. True. From the clinical, I guess, initiating clinical event. But you can detect this days in advance before you get a clinical uh, detection. You'll get a shift from venous to arterial, and that patient can be in the hospital within 24 hours, and that weight will not have changed at all. But I can assure you, a lot of things that are measured by our biosensor platform are out of whack, and are out of whack way before you feel it.
That's fascinating.
This
I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Well, so I have a couple of things. I see this as a really perfect opportunity for the transitional care program, which I know a lot of cardiologists are looking at TCM, PCM, those sort of things. But maybe nobody and I didn't work with any of these people personally. I've just heard that some cardiologists, some doctors, right, they like to take like that 3-day monitor and flip it instead of going 7 to 10 days. And you said, and the last thing, when they have a little bit longer data, the system does better. So my question is, what's the average length of time you feel or you have seen is the appropriate time that you should be monitoring to get the robust data that you're talking about? Is it just 1 day, or is it better after 7?
So define the patient a little better for me. So is that somebody that's recently hospitalized and now going home?
Well, I think truthfully what I've heard, never seen personally, so anybody that's watching, I'm not calling you out, that it's not so much a matter of everybody starts on 3 days and they're flipping them no matter what. On day 3, we're having them come back in. And it's like, did we see anything in that 3 days? No. Okay, well, then we're not going to maybe extend it for 7 days. There's no reason to extend it when we could put it on the next patient because my understanding of the reimbursement is that your reimbursement is the same within the 30 days, 3 days or 30. Without, I mean, there's some differences, but it's like marginal, right? Right. And so it seems to be financially lucrative for them to just flip it in 3 days. But again, what I heard you say is like the system, because of how robust it is, really can do better for the patient with a little bit more data.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So if you're talking about, someone in the clinic that is not hospitalized, hasn't been hospitalized in the last month or so, and you're trying to adjust meds because you haven't seen them in a year, you got an echo back and the ejection fraction is 45. So it's not below 40 where everybody knows what to do. It's in that 45 where, it could be going either way. Was it lower coming up? Is it going down? Which way is it headed? That type of patient is very easy to put a device on them. And in a matter of hardly any time, few days, you're going to know where they are, what the trends look like. There's some ways to detect based upon our studies. Again, some of this proprietary math, we know that there are certain things if we monitor, like for instance, if we take 4 or 5 different biosensors and compare them all, 1 day to the next day, we're going to have a lot of information for you to tell you whether or not you're in a good shape or bad. That's pretty easy right off the bat. Um, so when you're talking about, so for a non-hospitalized patients, you've got them almost from day one. Clearly, within 72 hours, you're going to know everything you need to know about a trend to be able to appropriately manage these individuals, because you're not just getting an EKG or an HRV. You're getting a lot more than that, which is what you're going to get on a 3-day, 4-day monitor, 7-day monitor. You're not going to get much more information than that. Um, and so, okay, so having said that, let's talk about a hospitalized patient. Most of the studies are going to show you the readmissions are going to occur, you know, 7 to 14 days, somewhere around in there. And of course, it's going to be super high after 14 days. So you have plenty of time within the first, 48 to 72 hours to get all the information you need to keep somebody out of the hospital, um, with a device on their chest that gives you enough information. You've got to have enough information. The level of information is the critical point. Yep.
Arlene, sorry, I didn't catch you. I cut you off the last time.
No. I was interested in your international exposure that you have right now. And I know before we got on, we were talking about the FDA and how slow they move in the United States, but you've been able to really accomplish a lot in some other countries. You want to talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. I mean, yeah, and it's, I'm not trying to bash FDA. I mean,
Sure.
they do a good job for what they do, and they keep us safe and as best to their ability, and they're human too. But it's just such a process to keep people safe on medical grade devices. So, we really don't have a problem with process, because if it's a medical grade device, let's talk medical grade to medical grade device. And so because of that, we have been able to go to other parts of the world and test our technology. And the bottom line is, all you really need is a 3G connection. So you don't need to have a lot of fancy equipment in your home or anything like that to be able to utilize the system. So we can go into developing nations, into very rural areas of developing nations where very sick individuals don't have the ability to get to a provider, to a cardiologist, even some of them not even to a hospital. It might be, hours away, and they don't have transportation. So you can really utilize the system in various parts of the world in very rural areas. Once again, they're treated the same as if they were in a very large cardiac hospital. So in other countries, we've been able to connect, you know, um, patients that are in very rural areas and have essentially medical social inequity, bringing that level of equality up in a manner of how they're treated. You can be in a big town or you can be in a little bitty town, and you can be treated the same way as long as you have a 3G connection. And in most of those, in most of the nations where we in developing countries, they have 5G. They're on fire with their connectivity. Um, and so we've been successful in areas of, we were concerned about, the translation between
Mhm.
what we do
Yeah.
and what other countries are doing. But that has been a very smooth transition. Um, what you find, in other parts of the world are very much like what we do. We're not special, is that people who really have a vested interest in their patients and providing that level of care, they onboard new technology very well. They fight for new technology. Um, the governments in countries such as India, we've had a very good response from their government because they see uh, the ability to save just billions and billions of US dollars
That's right.
on keeping people out of the hospital, and then hospital throughput. And a lot of hospitals, the length of stay in these hospitals cost just a whole bunch of money. And so by utilizing systems like Pulsario, we can have a better hospital throughput. So patients aren't waiting to get into the hospital if they need it. And if they're in there, they can get out and go home adequately treated remotely. And so this, this little bitty device right here, anything you can do in the United States in a hospital bed except a mechanical ventilator, you can do with this device on your chest at home.
Wow.
So,
amazing.
Making rounds, I can make rounds on you. I can listen to you. It's a stethoscope right there. That's a digital stethoscope. I can listen to you, your heart remotely. I can see your ECG. I get your body temperature. I can tell if you fell out of the bed. I got fall detection. I can understand how much you've moved around. I know how much water is in your chest. Um, I know if you're under emotional or physical stress. You know, all of these important features. Um, we're going to come to market in later in 2024. I can do your blood pressure with this. So you're not going to need a blood pressure cuff.
Wow.
I can do your O2 saturations with this. I can do your respirations with it. I can tell you if you have sleep apnea with this.
Wow.
So all of these things in one little device can be utilized for hospital at home technology. And this is what we really trying to be testing in these developing nations, because they really, really need more than just that remote monitoring and that RTM, RPM, chronic care management. Yes, they utilize them very well, and they are successful in that endeavor. But to take it to the whole next level, where we're in a completely virtual environment, uh, is what we're testing in international water, so to speak. And so far, so good. It's very doable. We're excited to bring that technology into the U.S. Uh, when we have the FDA giving us the green light.
So you're in India, Korea, you're going into the
Yeah.
UK, is that correct?
Yes. So we're in now in the NHS, the Innovation Hub with the NHS for all of Europe. We have offices in UK, developing on our platforms there. We're in. We're headed into Ireland soon. We're in India. We're in. We have master distributions in Thailand and in South Korea. Uh, Soon we'll be in all of the African nations. We have assisted some of the countries there, but we anticipate being in all of those with government, with their varying government bodies, in a matter of time. Hopefully, by the end of 2024, we'll
Wow.
make a strong push over there. Um, it's just so easy to train on. So it's hard to bring a company up and running in any country, um, much less multiple countries. But a FedEx package in a 30-minute video, and you're up and running.
Hmm.
As an institution, as an office, as a hospital, it's more like John's old neck of the wood, the administrating aspect of it, which we try to help guide some of the hospital systems with that. What does it take to onboard this if you have 100 doctors that you hire and run and their nursing staff and whatnot. So the administrative aspect of that um, probably requires just a touch more development, but what we
So,
normally do is suggest just a department. You basically have a Pulsario department, where you have that one individual is in charge of it, and they're able to just spread out so much by eliminating the unnecessary phone calls, the unnecessary alerts. Um, this really makes one individual able to manage a body of patients in heart failure, very, very inexpensively and really to the top of their game.
so
What?
okay,
Oh,
just a
no,
second,
keep
John.
going.
So
Yeah.
are there, okay, so now I just want to make sure that I get this straight. And John may understand this and I'm not picking it up. But Pulsario itself and the what you're doing with Pulsario is available in the United States. The only thing you're waiting on FDA approval is that patch that
This
will
little
be
doodad right here. Yeah.
advanced. Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
more.
Right now we have our engine with our AI product, all of that, the robot, all of that is available in the United States. Right now we utilize FDA approved devices such as blood pressure machines and scales and O2 sat monitors. Um, it's not so much that we're just monitoring the same old stuff. The magic behind it is what you do with those numbers.
Right, right.
Um, you know, the time of day matters. The activity of the individual, during those time frames matter as well. So when you group it and you put it all together and you turn it into mathematics so a computer can understand it, the power really gets fired up.
Are there
Um,
hospitals here in the United States using it now?
We've used it in much more clinic-based model.
Okay.
Um, Obviously, we test it, in some of these other areas, but right now we've basically utilized it as a clinic-based framework because even in a hospital system, the reason that we do that is even in a hospital system, you're going to have that transition of care team. You're going to have primary care employed physicians. So it really is going to be at their level, whereby you might enroll a patient leaving out of the hospital into that transition team, but the working body of individuals is really going to be in that clinic, whether it's owned by the hospital or not. It's really going to be in that framework. Same with home health agencies. The home health agency can utilize it now by bringing it in-house. Some of them do so via their medical director might want to be, in that game, or some of them actually have moved on to hire, a nurse practitioner or have nurse practitioners and physicians hired for multiple office type directives so that they can then answer the alerts and manage those patients, for, let's say, a cardiologist office or something like that, where that patient may not be able to get back in to see that cardiologist for 60, 90 days or longer.
That's
So then
absolutely
the home health agencies are a beautiful place, very qualified people in that space. And, the ones that are there want to be in that space and they truly enjoy helping people in their home. And we believe anyway, that this is how you do it. It should be in your home. You
sure.
know, it used to work pretty good way back in the day when doctors carried a bag and went to their
That's
houses,
right.
and you can see the full circle of medicine coming right back around.
Right.
And with technology, it is enabled, and it's a very doable thing for that doctor to quote unquote round, even in the product that we'll hopefully bring next year on your podcast again, or next 6 months, where we're completely virtual, where if John's at his home with this patch on and on our system, you might see me holoport into his home and visit with him in his home with this on his chest, giving me all the information I need, uh, and then simply holoport right out of there once the visit is done. This is not future. This is available now. We just have to make sure that it meets all the regulatory standards.
So you said something, whether it be a hospital-based system or private. I am currently very concerned about the direction physician offices and physicians are going, that it seems that only the rational option is to go hospital-based system in a lot of ways, that it's becoming more and more difficult to start your own practice, especially if you're a specialist, because of the equipment and all the capex. But a lot of these doctors are selling their practices. I fear that we're going to be missing out on the innovation that's around us, because these hospital-based systems tend to be very rigid and not open to these newer ideas. How should we approach this in looking at new technology as a physician for administration? Like, how do we dig through all of that, especially with this combining to the Baptist system or Methodist system or whatever system it might be?
That's a great question, and a topic that I'm sure is going to be debated time and time again. But when you're seeing now 60% of these cardiologists are basically owned by hospital systems now, and they direct their care. We have to be smart enough as physicians and as healthcare providers as a whole to understand what the hospital is doing. I mean, and what physicians are trying to do. I mean, I'm still an independent practitioner, but where else in the world can you go and your reimbursement is cut year in after year out, yet electricity is more expensive, your internet is more expensive, insurance for your staff is more expensive. We still are dedicated to providing health care for all of our employees on our dime. That becomes more expensive. Meanwhile, Medicare just continues to cut and cut and cut and want more. So it's not startling that physicians have to run for cover, because I wouldn't mind sharing my electric bill in my office with 10 other doctors or 50 or 100 other doctors. But the reality is that you do lose some of that ability to have an independent level of practice for some individuals. So we have to be smart enough to go to, you mentioned, a Baptist or Methodist type system and say, listen, we can help you by managing the cost of these physician offices and the reduction of overall cost of healthcare by utilizing our system so that, you can utilize a system. If there's an acute stroke, 885 new strokes per year, 2/3 of them are going to be new strokes and not a recurrent stroke. So, over 800,000 strokes a year, I should have said. 2/3 of them are going to be new strokes. So what are you going to get? Most of you're going to get an echocardiogram. You're going to get, implantable loop recorder or some long-term event monitor. You're going to get a home sleep study. You're going to get all of these different things. Great. What if I can walk into an office and say, yes, we want you to do all those things, but you can do most of them, at least right now, with something that I can do for the cost of, 266 implantable loops. I mean, for one implantable loop, I can monitor 266 of these individuals for at least 90 days, where you're going to find the vast majority of the AFib. You're going to pick up on it within 9 to 30 days. And now you don't have to worry about the expensive implantable loop recorder and the ongoing expense of an implantable loop recorder over the next 36 to 60 months. So I'm not saying they don't have their role. I mean, I use them all the time. They have their role, but there is a much more efficient and economical way to do it with the same amount of accuracy for the magnitude of individuals. You're not missing out on anything. And so there's ways to get around it, but we have to address it. My opinion, we have to address it on two phases, one of which is cost and the other is productivity. By utilizing a system that manages alerts and manages the calls and helps keep the burden off of the nurses and the therapists and the medical assistants, this is where it becomes costly and burdensome for healthcare. So if you're managing costs and you're lowering the burden, you can make a lot of organizations happy because their reimbursement is going to stay the same. And if we can affect them on their bottom line and make their employees a lot happier, and or the ability to reduce the staff size or perhaps utilize staff in another area of that system, then by all means go do that and then just improve the quality of care. It's not that people aren't trying. It's just everybody's overwhelmed and overburdened by useless information.
Right. That's true.
Paperwork. I get it. But if we can streamline all of that, then, and we do, that's the purpose of our company. Just better care, better quality, lower cost, more efficient, and we don't need the middleman. This goes our alerts go directly to the person that has the action or has the ability to take the action. So you don't need a call center per se. Yeah. You don't need to hire 100 nurses in a call center if you're a hospital system. It's going to go directly to the providers, nurse practitioner, PA, whoever can manage that alert. Fully facilitated, fully backed up with evidence-based medicine. This is the stuff they know to do now. They just don't do it.
Pretty amazing.
So 90 days, FDA approval. We're excited about that for you. We hope that goes well. We're getting to the top of the hour, actually a little 5 over. But if somebody was going to reach out to you or wanted to get more information based on this, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, I would just tell them to quickly just reach out to Pulsario. Just jump on Pulsario.com and you'll get all the information you need right there.
All right. Dr. Kevin Courville, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. It was extremely fascinating. Again, I spent time in that space, and I think you are on to big things. I just hope that they will listen. Everybody out there, let's start listening. And speaking of listen, if you listen quietly, every time you hear the word Oasis, Arlene Maxim's name is said as the most amazing nurse in all of the country. Her knowledge, her skill, her grace. Wow. I appreciate it every week to get to sit down with you, Arlene, and we have conversations.
Well, I can't argue with that.
Oh, thank you so much. And happy Valentine's Day to both of you.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day too.
Next week we're going to have somebody pretty exciting on too, and I'm not even going to disclose the name yet, but it's going to be a great Wednesday, and this has been absolutely. I used the word fascinating earlier, and it has been fascinating. I've learned so much more today than although I had a little bit of knowledge about Pulsario, but this was wonderful, and I so much appreciate you coming on with us, Dr. Courville. Thank you.
And full circle, not that I said anything before, I had jumped on a little late, but my grandmother was having heart surgery today. They're putting in a pacemaker. So, I mean, these things touch all of us, in all different parts of our lives. And the better technology that we have today, and obviously what we're going to have tomorrow, should help quality and outcomes and overall well-being in life. And Dr. Kevin Courville is on the cutting edge of doing that. So thank you so much for all that you do, Doc. And everybody out there, happy Valentine's Day. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We could really use your support. We're trying to get our message out there for everybody because there's a lot of new and interesting things out there. There's a lot of great programs. There's a lot of ways that your agency, your practice, your healthcare community can use and get some help from us or some of our partners that we have come on here. So we always appreciate it, and we'll be back with an exciting guest next Wednesday.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.